Michigan looks like it's somewhat averted a crisis, at least to this point, with the 3 NFL franchises who seem to have interest in Wink Martindale now currently having filled their positions. We'll talk about what that means, as well as how you as a Michigan fan, as well as those Ohio State lurkers, how you should deal with the Ohio State National Championship that just happened on Monday night. Let's talk about it here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group, still very clearly with a diminished voice, which I didn't really know until I started, because I haven't said much of anything up to this point. It's 5 p.m. Anyway, really good news for Michigan, as Atlanta, Indianapolis, and have both filled their roles. The Cincinnati Bengals had not necessarily filled its role, but Wink didn't interview there. There was just supposed interest. So that means that Michigan will get to live another day, essentially, when it comes to being able to maintain its defensive coordinator. Now, obviously, there's a lot other aspects that could change things because the NFL coaching carousel is far from over. You're going to see a lot of changes still continuing to happen throughout, because there's a domino effect, right? One team loses a coach somewhere, whether it's like you look at the Detroit Lions, looking like it's losing both coordinators, already lost the offensive coordinator, almost certainly losing Aaron Glenn to the Jets, barring a change. Then they need a coordinator. If they don't hire in-house and they go somewhere else, say they take someone else's defensive coordinator, now they have an opening. Or even just those new coaches like Ben Johnson, who are looking to fill out their staff. They might sit there and say, you know what? I like what Wink did with the Baltimore Ravens. I like what he did with Michigan, and I think that he deserves another go-around. Now, again, Wink, his intention is to stay in Ann Arbor, as it has been reported. The big thing is, though, if someone comes and, as he said, basically back a drinks truck up to his doorstep, then that can certainly change things, which is why he is open to any of the conversations that could potentially happen. But I don't know if anyone is going to overpay for him at this point. So Michigan's probably safe. If I was Michigan, I would still be like, let's just pad your checkbook just a little bit, because we need to keep you for sure, at least this year, if not this and next year. That's what I would do if I was Michigan. I don't know if they're going to do that, because they can probably get away with, it's like the idea of having insurance on a rental car, right? Like, do you really want to get in that, that insurance? And just in case, I'm talking about the extra insurance, not just the whatever you already, are coming to the table with. And they're like, oh, do you want to protect against the, any dings and stuff? And you sit there and say, hey, well, I think it's going to end up being okay. I'm only going to have this for 5 days. So why would I do that? Now, there's the chance that you get dinged. And, but then then you end up looking at it and saying, oh man, I should have got the insurance, or vice versa. So, it's kind of an interesting and precarious situation for Michigan. Now, it's obviously, to me, it's crucially important that Michigan keeps him, because we saw what happened the last couple games. And if you look at the Ohio State game and say, well, but he had Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, and they were the ones that really did that. Okay, well, we saw what happened against Alabama. Michigan's B team, in a lot of ways, you look front to back. I mean, you didn't have the 2 starting tackles. You didn't have the starting edge rusher in Josiah Stewart. You didn't have Makari Page. You didn't have Will Johnson. And I know they didn't have Will Johnson against Ohio State, but you had all of these kind of moving pieces and a lot of guys that pretty much hadn't played or are going to play next year that played so well against a potent offense in Alabama, and they got the job done. So that kind of sets the stage for why you would want to be able to continue to have that continuity, especially given that there's some There are some added players coming in, right? You look at like a Nate Marshall, who just got named a 5-star, according to Rivals. We're going to talk in segment 3 about the constant criminally underrating of Bryce Underwood, according to Rivals. But it's I think that is that kind of shows like, okay, you're in a good spot with what you have. You don't want any changes. This isn't just like the continuity hire going from the national championship to the 2024 season, where you're like, we're going to theoretically keep things the same. We're going to have a similar, basically the same system with a new coordinator. We're going to have the same identity, but with new coaches. This is, we literally want to keep our coaches, right? We want to keep everything we have intact. So if I'm Michigan, I want to do everything I can to make sure that stays that way. But I think that that's obviously great news. I'm going to cough. You'd think I'd remember to bring a beverage. I never do. So there's a lot of things there where you look at it and you say, okay, we just need to make sure no matter what, because we're already changing one side of the ball for the better. But we don't really want, like the defense. Yeah, you want it to get better than it was for like the first 7-8 games, but like you want what you got in the last couple games, right? From essentially Indiana forward, or you might even say the second half of Oregon. Maybe kind of not look at that first half of Indiana, but still, you look at that and you say, okay, we want to keep things as close to the same, in hopes that it actually gets better, because it does have that opportunity. That's one of the things that people, are going to look at and say, well, there's no way that this defensive line can get better or the defense can get better. But we kind of dealt with that in a lot of year over year stuff. People thought what Michigan had in 2021 was a unicorn, right? They lucked their way into this. They lucked their way into beating Ohio State after losing to Michigan State. And, that's it. And then they did change the coordinator. And they did lose Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo and Josh Ross, and somehow got better. Everyone said, there's no way the line is going to be better. Now, true, the line wasn't better, right? It was, everything was good at that point. The pass rush wasn't as productive in 2022, but it was still, I don't want to say it was still good. That was, it was decent, but it could have been better. And then by the time you got to 2023, it was firing on all cylinders. So it's a positive that Michigan's in this scenario right now, where it's like, okay, this is looks like we're probably safe, but hopefully it continues to go that way. All right, let's talk about the thing that no one outside of the state of Ohio wanted to see happen. But nonetheless, there's a lot of ways. There's been some funny things that happened yesterday during the national championship game, and I have a little bit of a gripe with the college football playoff as well. We'll get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, from the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet, rather. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, like many of you, I hate watched the national championship game. Yes, I was rooting for Notre Dame. I know that's anathema to a lot of people. I think it's a little easier yes, Notre Dame is a rival. Notre Dame is a hated rival, but it's a little different when you're not playing them very often, right? Michigan hasn't played them in 5 years. They're not on the docket for another 7 or 8 years. So it's kind of like whatever. Marcus Freeman, despite his Ohio State having played there, he's very likable in my opinion. And I think that they have a very likable roster. Now, I also like a lot of guys on the Ohio State roster. I'm not shy to say that. I still talk to Travion Henderson. I think that there's a lot of really good guys on that roster. You got to look beyond the traditional rivalry hatreds when it comes to life. One of my really good friends is an ardent Buckeye fan, right? Like, I know there's people out there that people are watching or listening that are like, that's heresy. I would never even be friends with an Ohio State or a Michigan State fan or whatever. Well, that's, you're limiting yourself in life. It can be aggravating and frustrating. But yeah, I was rooting for Notre Dame, and that was a masterful opening drive, and that was about it. Obviously, they kind of started pulling things together late. But I was having some fun, just kind of like half watching it. Obviously, I'm still just kind of out of it and tired from the having been sick for a week. And so I'm just kind of scrolling Twitter and enjoying just coming up with little funny jokes. And I made one joke responding to one of you. They said that 2023 Michigan would have beaten either of these teams. And I quote tweeted it and said 2024 Michigan would have beaten either of these teams, because obviously Michigan did beat Ohio State in 2024 with Davis Warren and all of that. So it's lighthearted, right? And it was hilarious to see how many Buckeyes came into my mentions to try to invalidate the joke. Like, they take it so seriously. And this is happening while the game is going on, right? This isn't like the game was over and they're like, so what? We're national champions. Like, the game is actually happening. Now, I cannot imagine, by the way, number one, Michigan didn't lose to Ohio State before it won the national championship last year. I can't imagine a single one of you, even if going and finding like innocuous jokes and like feeling like I've got to respond to this right now and put this person in their place. Like, some people took it way too seriously. Someone called me a clown and like was just like, some other choice words. It's just hilarious because it's like, and one person said that my insecurity was showing. It's like, my insecurity is showing. Your insecurity is showing. You can't even watch your own team's game that's happening in this moment without getting angry at a joke. So, anyway, with all of that said, I mean, that kind of sums up this rivalry at this stage. I feel like it's a very it's a very similar inverse to the Michigan State rivalry, except for like Michigan fans were very much like this in like 2011, 2012, 2014, or maybe not 2012, 2014, 2013. I remember my guy Taylor Lewan, when he was on the team, talking a lot of big words before succumbing to the Spartans. And, there's just like a lot of bravado and talk and all of these types of things. And Michigan fans obviously always diminished, even when losing to Michigan State, was like, it was kind of that same mentality, at least, of, we'll, that was a fluke. Even as they were kind of piling up, that was a fluke. We're still better, and who cares? So there is kind of a similarity there, but I feel like the Ohio State fans act more like Michigan State fans in general. Not, they have the Michigan superiority complex mixed with the Michigan State insecurity somehow. I don't know how that works. Before I get too deep into this, I do want to say congratulations to Ohio State, because certainly I did not think that there was any way, shape, or form after the loss to Michigan they were going to win it all. I thought that some of the other teams, including, two of them that they beat, Oregon and Texas, I thought were going to handle business. And I thought that Georgia certainly was going to be in a much better position than it was. But so credit to them, and obviously having extra games and all of that. But it's how do you handle it if you're a Michigan fan? Well, you pretty much got to do what you've been doing in terms of like it. Okay, two things. I say you do what you've been doing, but I would go the other way. Be a gracious, be a very, very gracious sportsman, and acknowledge their national championship and congratulate them. But then also remind them makes it, all the better. Like, congratulations. We know the excitement that you feel because we just were there. And don't sit there and gate everything, right? Like, I know it's probably aggravating to a lot of you as they try to asterisk and go cheating. I can't do it, but well, with everything. But be gracious, be magnanimous, but then go ahead and add the 13-10 of it all to remind them that that's great. Even though you won it, you still couldn't beat us. That's how I would look at it. If I was an Ohio State fan, I would look at it this way. And I know some, like I said, I've got Ohio State friends. I haven't talked to many of them yet, but I know that it's still eating them alive that they lost to Michigan, even though that they won the national championship. If I'm Ohio State, I celebrate the national championship. And when it comes to Michigan fans, keep your mouth shut because you don't have anything you can say to Michigan fans right now. Like, yeah, you can say we won the national championship. Michigan still has, you have a national title bragging right. But the only team that you didn't beat that was on your schedule is Michigan. So Michigan's going to sit there and just look at you and laugh at you. There's not one Michigan fan, I don't think, given the way everything had transpired over the year, going from winning the Rose Bowl to the national championship, losing Jim Harbaugh, getting a new staff with the first-year head coach, and just the way the season itself played out. I don't think a Michigan fan, if you were to say like certain things are going to have to just be what they are, like you are going to lose Jim Harbaugh. You have this lack of talent, and Davis Warren's your starting quarterback, and you don't have any receivers, and all of these things. If you just said like this is where you're standing here, would you accept beating Ohio State and they win a national championship? Or don't beat Ohio State and they don't win a national championship? Well, a Michigan fan's going to take that every single time. I know that's kind of creating a weird scenario, but I think that with the mixture of beating Ohio State and then beating Alabama, I think Michigan fans and getting Bryce Underwood, that's a crucial, important step there because it's hope for the future. I don't think a Michigan fan would trade places with a lot of people, right? Got to celebrate the last year of the 4-team college football playoff, which to me is still superior. It still meant that you can't lose games like Ohio State just did. You can't lose games like Notre Dame did against NIU. To me, that's, the fact that they get mulligans and such now is kind of disappointing. It kind of ruins the sport in a lot of ways. So with that in mind, I do want to mention real quick, what is college football playoff doing, man? So many parts here. I think it's just like ridiculous between like, I don't, for all the people that say, best thing ever having the expanded playoff. Well, no, I don't. Again, the regular season part, the impact that had, I hate that. And while it is nice, though, more teams are fighting to be in contention and all of that, I still just hate that the regular season was diminished as a result of it and the results and the fact that losing to a 500 Michigan team at home had essentially, it did have an impact. It meant that you had a tougher road in the playoff, but it also, if you won that game, you're going to play that extra game in the Big Ten championship anyway. So it's not like it necessarily meant less games. It just meant maybe a tougher road, and they managed to get it done. But also just the fact that they had it on Inauguration Day. I understand that date was probably set before Joe Biden dropped out and Kamala Harris took over, but you were going to have essentially one way or the other a new president and a lot of fanfare one way or the other. I was just it wasn't even on my mind that the national championship game was last night until like an hour beforehand. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right, it is. And I talked to my best friend earlier today, and he said like he forgot about it. He forgot about it until it was an hour in. Not great. Like, get better. Like, they for all the people that say like it needs to end on January 1st in the Rose Bowl, I would agree with that. Find a way to make that happen, because just doing it the way you're doing it now, and it just gets lost. It's ridiculous. Like, it's the mini Super Bowl, and it should have all the fanfare in the world. College football, maybe not from a financial standpoint or even a full-on viewership standpoint, but certainly an in-person standpoint, it's unparalleled. It's the best sport in the world, in my opinion. It's far better than the NFL. And yet like the Super Bowl is just, to me, it's boring. That's just me. But it gets its day, and college football should have its day, and it shouldn't be competing with obvious big national events. It just shouldn't be. All right, let's talk about rivals because they're absurd. I praised them earlier because they elevated Nate Marshall to a 5-star, number 27 overall. But Bryce Underwood came in at number 3. Ridiculous. All right, let's talk about that here in just a moment. But before we do, this message is brought to you by Prizepicks, the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prizepicks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or regular season, Prizepicks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. Now it's playoff time, and there's no better way to get in on the action than Prizepicks. Here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least 2 players, and if your pick hits, you win up to 1,000 times your cash. That's right, 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. For me, I'm all about the hot takes this season. This past week on Prizepicks, I went with Lamar Jackson for more than 250 passing yards and Travis Kelce for more than 70 receiving yards. It's fun to predict and easy to play. Plus, with Prizepicks Flex Play, you can still double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And with the app, you get your winnings fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. So get ready to run your game this football season. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right. It's $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prizepicks. Prizepicks. Run your game. All right, I get rivals is like and I don't mean like Maize and Blue Review, which is excellent. I think that Josh Henschke, Brock Helig, and Trevor McHugh do a great job over there. I love those guys, and Josh is a close personal friend of mine. Rivals National is just it's a dying thing. It's a joke. And I understand that you have to kind of establish yourself as something different to kind of get clicks. And I mean, they at least got clicks today. Like I aggregated the story about Nate Marshall being a 5-star. Cool. But I have a little bit less appreciation or understanding for you when the other big 3 are all aligned on something that is obvious. And which is Bryce Underwood is the number 1 player in the country and the number 1 quarterback in the country, right? Because he's that level of generational talent. And for some reason, rivals can't see that and puts him at number 3. They're like, oh, he's going to be good. But guess who's better? Tavion St. Clair at number 2, the Ohio State commit. And which it's like the buzz around him isn't even close. And then Keelan Russell, the Alabama commit, who they rose in the rankings due to his performance in the Under Armour game. Bryce didn't go and play in the All-Star games. He instead went to Michigan. I'm sure if he wouldn't played in that, it would have been a little bit of a different story. So I just don't know what they're doing. Not trying to put anybody on blast here, but it's a little ridiculous, I think. And I think it's just too much of like the hipstery. We're trying to be different. We're trying to be edgy. We're trying to set ourselves apart from the others, right? You look at a lot of the players, Michigan, Andrew Babalola, 5-star in all the services except for rivals. The expected incoming commit, Ty Haywood, 5-star everywhere except for rivals. It's like they try to get too cute with things. It's one thing if you're ESPN and you're just kind of undermanned. It's kind of like 1 or 2 people at ESPN doing the job that like teams do at the recruiting services, the dedicated ones. But that kind of makes a little bit more sense because they're just not going to see everybody. They don't have the manpower. They don't have those types of things to do. They used to have a little bit more when Tom Van Haren was there, but they don't now. So, okay, that makes sense for ESPN, but for rivals, it's like you have the team, you have the guys, and you just always seem to just be so far over your skis with your rankings. And there's a reason why no one outside of rivals uses rivals rankings. Right, like, yeah, sure, Alabama and Ohio State are going to use rivals rankings with their quarterbacks right now, but those aren't consensus by any stretch. It's just silly. That's all it is. It's just absolutely silly. And be better. That's all. Oh my God. Be better. Because it's just absurd. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Tomorrow, unless there's some kind of breaking news, we'll get back and we'll talk about the defensive line. We'll do our breakdown. Thursday, we'll try to do a mailbag, and then Friday we'll go either back to news to talk about, or we'll go back to our position previews. So that'll do it for us now. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you again soon. Peace.